Hey art nerds, today I've got a fun blast from the past. I found the art supplies that I used while I was in undergrad. I almost said grundergrad. Undergrad. And yes, I seriously did use Reeves and those Koh-i-Noor multicolor sort of stacking watercolor rings. So I thought today would be a really fun day to do sort of a throwback thing. So I even went ahead and drew and inked an old character of mine. This is the original Natto Soup mascot, and she's a friendly little gnome who lives in the woods and eats only mushrooms. And I thought it'd be a lot of fun to challenge myself today to use the materials I used to use and see what I can come up with. So I hope you guys will enjoy. Alright, so I'll go ahead and give you guys a good look at what we're playing with today. This is an 18-piece Reeves fine watercolor set in the super old box. And it looks like it's been chewed up by a dog, which it very well may have been. Inside are trays of these very fine watercolors, and I have not used these in years. And then we've also got a Koh-i-Noor pan watercolor mixing set, and these are still around, and this thing got a lot of use. So these were what I used for a really long time. Also got a cup of clean water. I've got some mixing palettes. I've got some brushes. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the brushes I used to use in undergrad, so I have selected just some of my normal watercolor brushes. And I've also got gator board, blue tape, and of course the illustration that we're going to be doing. And I'm going to go ahead and tape this illustration down. And to make this even more fun, I am doing this in my childhood bedroom. So we will see. Just like I used to as a kiddo, I am doing this sitting cross-legged on the floor. I do have some natural light lamps though to sort of help me out. So I think I'm going to go ahead and maybe start with some of these. And it has been a really long time since I've used any of these little palettes. And without an eyedropper, I have to be very careful pouring my water. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to activate one of these blues. And I have no idea if I'm going to get around using the Reeves set because the Koh-i-Noor set has a lot of colors in it, but we'll see, we'll find out. I think this is meant to be a skin tone, and I think that's what I used it for. Ew, gross. There's like, ugh. These are at least 5 years old, so not that they would go bad in such a short period of time, but a lot has changed. Definitely older than 5 years, in fact. So I think the first thing I'm going to try to do is just paint sort of a shadowy outline, and then sort of smear that out like that. So I'm going to do that for the rest of the figure. Okay, so I've got sort of a border thing going on, and I should probably mention that I am painting this on Canson Biggie XL. I think I used Strathmore 400 series back then more, but this is pretty comparable to what I would have used if I would have known about it. It is a very inexpensive cellulose student grade paper. And I find that these Koh-i-Noor watercolors are really granulating, so that is definitely something I'm going to want to try and be aware of and compensate for. So I'm just going in and painting some of this blue in sort of underneath her lace, just to help place her. And then once this has a chance to dry, I'm going to probably go in and tighten it a little bit more. And I'm doing the same thing here and here. up there and there. Get that in right there. Clean that out and blend that out just a little bit. And then maybe while some of, ooh, I can't even rest my hand on it. While some of this is sort of wet, I can maybe go into some of those areas. Let's see. I just want sort of more watercolory blend effects. And it definitely feels weird to say watercolory since watercolor is typically what I do. And under here as well. And in there. And I'm going to have to change out the water in a little bit, but there, I think that is a good start. That's had plenty of time to dry. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to use a lighter version of that color, and I want to get all of the white areas, or at least as many of them as I can. Using a very watered down version of that color. And that is a really easy way to paint sort of a basic white, but really, depending on the other colors you use, you can use a very watered down red for your white, you can use purple, you can even use gray tones. It doesn't have to be just blue. It can be kind of whatever goes best with the colors you're using in your illustration. And she has a checkerboard pattern on her dress that is white and red. So what I'm going to do, first I'm just kind of filling in the loops on her lace. But what I want to do is I'm just going to go ahead and shade all of the dress, and then I'll paint the red on top of that. Grab some more of that blue. Do the lace down here as well. Okay, and that's going to need to dry. I can go ahead and tighten up the top a little bit, add a little more shadow. And it's good to do the sort of all over glaze early, since it is so watered down. That way it's not going to disturb the other colors we're going to put down. All right. Need to let that dry before we can do anything else. Alright, so now that that's dry, I'm going to go ahead and mix up her skin. And I also went ahead and grabbed a fresh cup of water. I'm just going to drip drop some in. And I think I remember this being kind of a skin tone, this brown that's almost off camera, because it's a very light sort of tan color. Man, these have to be almost used directly from the pans, because if you try to make a wash out of them, there's just not enough there. So if you are playing with some paints like these along at home, I would recommend you go get a ceramic plate, or I guess even a plastic plate, or even a butcher's tray to use for these sort of watercolors. So it is indeed kind of a skin tony color, like a yellow ochre. So I'm just going to go ahead and start applying it. I don't really want to do an all over wash, so we'll see what I end up with. Then I'm going to use some water and blend it out a little bit, and that should dry pretty light, because watercolors dry lighter than they go down. I actually use these watercolors and the Reeves watercolors to do a stop motion stop motion animation more than a couple, like 10 years ago. There's cut paper with it too. And I think I turned the photos into like a picture book that you guys can check out on my Gumroad. Unfortunately, that was right before YouTube was really an accessible thing, so I'm pretty sure I no longer have the animation portion of it. And it was really pretty rough because I didn't have any animation experience at all. And I didn't really have a lot of stop motion experience either. But it was still a fun project. Okay, so that arm is still wet. I'll just dab some paint into it. It's a little messy, but most of that mess is from me using a chewed up brush rather than the paints themselves. So I'll just dab that up. And I think, I'll zoom in for you guys, while that dries, I'll get started by coloring in the darker eyelets. So I'm going to use the same blue that I used for the background and that I used as an undercolor. And I'm going to use a small paintbrush and hopefully be able to get into some of these tight areas without too much muss and fuss. Grab some more. Oh, and I'm getting some bleeding into her skin because I didn't let it dry fully. So clean that up a little bit. A lot of fine detail work. I think when I used these paints, I was also a much sloppier painter who didn't really care about getting tight details. I was just trying to get some coverage. So I'm a very different watercolorist now. And let's see, I think while that's drying, I can do another layer of the skin, and this one will be pretty saturated. And these colors seem to have a lot of optical brighteners in them because they're kind of obscuring my line art. That's usually a sign when the majority of colors do that, that there's some additives at play, which shouldn't be surprising. I think this was like a $10 palette when I bought it all those years ago. Okay, I'll avoid. Looks like there's a few areas that are still very wet, so I guess I'll just be somewhat careful. And then I will grab one of the reds. I guess I'll do this one here. So I used to do blush very differently then too. That's going to need more scrubbing. Still wet. Okay, and then I will go ahead and also paint her little basket. Ooh, it's really hard to get saturated colors from this set. And I'll grab some of the skin tone brown and just kind of brush that in there, maybe get a little bit of color variation. Pick that up a little bit. Hopefully that will there. All right, that needs to dry. So it looks like just the basket and the pink on her cheeks are drying. So I think I can go ahead and do her hair. And she used to have red-brown hair and I don't want to drip drop everywhere. So I'm going to grab some of this over here. Oh man, you can barely get any color. I don't know how I used to use these. I mean, I didn't activate them in advance, and that's definitely something I normally do with watercolors, so maybe that's what's going on. paints also have kind of a color by numbers sort of feel to them. I wonder how similar they are to those Artist Loft paints I reviewed a while back. They are Koh-i-Noor, which tends to be a better brand. But I know even good brands often have their cheaper offerings. Okay. And then, I can grab some of this much darker brown over here, I think. And some of the brown that I'd used initially on the basket. Maybe I need stiffer brushes because these natural hair brushes just put down so much water and they grab so little paint. So maybe that's what's going on. Or at least part of it. I'll go ahead and activate one of the dark reds over here. And start working on filling in that plaid. I do think it probably does hold a little more water than the paper and these paints are really suited for. And back in the day when I used these, I definitely had a very fill in all the area kind of approach. I'll see if I can dig up some of my art from then, or even better, maybe the originals from that animation I did. Because I had made like 20 cut paper, not maquettes exactly, but they were kind of like little paper dolls. Oh, did I mess that up? Yes, I did. It should be this one instead. Let's see what I can do. Red tends to be very staining, but we might be able to get most of that off without having to use white out or white gouache or anything like that. It's a lot of it. Not perfect, but that's okay. And I'll just have to correct that later with some white gouache. And just hope this doesn't run all up into it. Okay. So that's the first layer on her plaid. Kind of wish I'd made her shirt a different color because it's going to be a lot of white. Maybe I'll make it the same color as her eyes, which were green, and I'll grab some of this and some of that. So the colors we used on her hair. And I'll go ahead and fill in her little boots. And then, looks like her eyes might be dry enough. So she had like kind of sage green eyes. So I'll grab some of this gray. And I'll grab some of that green. We'll see what we can get. A very watered down color. Alright, so that is another layer that needs to dry. right, so it looks like that hair layer might be dry. I definitely want it to be darker, since I feel like this has got kind of like a coloring book slash, oh, that eye is still wet, fill in the blank sort of look going. So I do want to try and add a little more detail, because the whole point is kind of to show growth and development. So, oh, gotta do something to work around where that eye is, because it's going to absorb. The brown, and I don't want that. I'll just work it real close, but not quite. And I'll zoom in so you guys can see. Oh, and then I have some areas of the blue that dry darker than others. So I'm going to go in and try to remedy that. And just try to be really careful. And this paper and these paints definitely have limitations, so I'm already kind of thinking about ways I can get a better illustration while still accommodating those limitations. Always trying to think what can be done to make this a better piece. Some more of that kind of sage green color. Oh, I need to get the handle on her basket too. Somehow I missed that. So I want to do the cuffs on her dress with that. Just trying to introduce a little more color. And her eyes look like they finally dried. And I'll grab some of the darker green. Wow, really? It's not really want to go. Trying to dab it down in there. And then darker brown on her boots. And I'm just kind of looking at it from a variety of angles. See what that red. And very carefully draw in the cast shadow for it. And try to get that up here without getting into the green. And then on her hair, I think I even want to go a little bit darker. So I need to let her eyes dry first. So I will do that. So I think I can go ahead and get back into the hair, which was red brown. I'll zoom out a little bit so you guys can see. Red, brown, and brown. And I also want to mix in a little bit of that darker brown that I used on her boots, because one of the problems with these really cheap little watercolors is that you really don't build up a lot of saturation. So you really do need all those colors just to get the color you're looking for. Oh, that's too much on the brush. That's another problem with these, is too much paint on the brush and it just globs down. You don't have any control. Okay, that's looking pretty good. And then I'm going to go in with that ultramarine, and I missed one down there, and I want to sort of outline and darken some of these shadows since we've got a really cartoony look going on. I think that will just kind of help this look more cohesive and more finished, because that's one of the problems I'm encountering since these paints have limitations, is how do I make this look like a finished coherent piece. So I'm going to try tightening up some of the details a little bit. And let's see. Want a little bit of shadow on that green kerchief, so I'm going to grab some of the dark green. There we go. And her cheeks look kind of blobby, but I'm going to leave them at least. Wait, I've got an idea. Go cartoony or go home, right guys? So actually I need to clean that out better because it's got stuff in it. And then grab some of the red that you guys can't see. Because if we're gonna go cartoony, we should really do that. We should embrace that look. And I'm going to use kind of a peachy orangey red on the mushrooms. And I'm leaving the little white specks. And then up here too, and I need to come back and do the handle, but I need to give that a chance to dry. Okay y'all, let's go ahead and get this hopefully finished, or at least close to finished. Let's get some more paint on the paper basically. So we started off painting the orange of those mushrooms, so I'm going to go a little darker. And what's at least nice about these color wheels is that they progress in general from light to dark. I don't know if you guys were able to get a look at them. I'll try to remember to show them to you guys before I end the video. But they, in general, progress from light to dark, which might make, considering you can't exactly like saturate a color too easily. You really have to go darker in order to get that darker tone. It makes sense that they would have it laid out that way. Like I said, I'll show you guys in a second what I'm talking about, but I think it probably makes for a little bit easier blending and a little bit more accurate mixing, at least for very, very simple watercolor techniques. And these are still sold. I mean, I saw them at David Art Supply last week, so they're still around. People are still buying them. I bought these at Dixie Art Supply, which was another art store here in the Metairie area. But it has since gone under, which is a shame because I have some very good memories of Dixie. So basically, if you enjoy your local art supply store, you should definitely try to support them by giving them your loyal business, help them stay around, help them stay solvent. Tightening up a few details here and there. Nothing too major. Working with a much smaller brush now. I'll go ahead. Oh, I'm zoomed out. Good. I'll go ahead and zoom out so you guys can see what I'm doing. Go ahead and do the last pass where I've mixed a very dark brown with black. That's right, we want to go ahead and do the handle on this basket. Then I am going to, can I zoom out more? I cannot. It's okay. I can jostle the camera and twist it a little bit. So this is the color we used as our skin tone. I'm going to mix these two, or even these two, together and get a little bit of a darker brown, which is sadly off camera for right now, but will be on paper in a minute. And this allows me to add a little more shadow to the skin. There, I think that'll work. And then a little bit of pink maybe on her nose, just a smidge. So as you see, it makes mixing those darker tones a little bit easier. And then I'm going to grab some dark blue from over here. And just hit the bottom like that. And then the only time I used anything from the Reeves kit, at least in this one, we're going to use the Reeves Chinese white. This is usually, it's also zinc white, see, zinc in parentheses. This is usually used to mix your watercolors to make pastels. Some people like to do it like that. I am basically going to use it very thick, like a gouache. We'll see if there's any life left in the tube. Surprisingly, there is. These are surprisingly not ruined. I would bring them back with me, but I have another set of reeds that I need to do a field test slash demonstration for. Otherwise, I would just bring this one back. So we've got our Chinese slash zinc white up here at the top. And I'm just going to grab a healthy dose of it. And I kind of want to do like a Delft pattern in the background at some point. But I want to do that with the same blue. That I used to do sort of this background grounding. And this is, even though we're working very thick, it's not very opaque. In general, I would recommend you use gouache instead of just thickly applied white watercolor. Okay, I'll zoom in. Oops, sorry, you guys get to see the tassel on my dress. Clean that up a little bit. That smeared a little bit. Clear this up a little bit. And all right. Clean that out and get that blue. And want to use a nice high quality brush since we're pulling details. So get a nice thick amount of that blue. And I'm just going to freehand pattern in. Not even using reference, which I should. Reference would make my life a lot easier. And I'm working directly from the pan. So I'm getting a nice, fairly intense blue. These are definitely watercolors that benefit from spraying them or activating them ahead of time. They are very dry and it's hard to get saturated colors and good saturated mixes from them. So it's kind of hard to do washes with these. But they might not be bad if you're just looking to do little illustrations like what we did today. You guys ought to see me. I'm all hunched over on the floor, trying to get this finished. Trying to get the best angle I can. Certainly used the heck out of this blue today. For Cara pages, I don't necessarily use a lot of ultramarine blues, but I really do enjoy them. Okay, it's kind of the base pattern. Now to fill it in a little bit. And it probably looks a little bit busy, but that's okay. Ooh, that's a sloppy one down there. That's fine too. Just getting that area filled in. almost done. And then I kind of want to go in and tighten the area around her. Hopefully kind of make that more of a focal point. Since there's a lot going on right now. Or even, no, I should do it with blue, not with white. I was going to say, or even with white, but I feel like that would then detract from like that halo we established around her earlier. And although the brush I'm using, which is a Princeton Kolinsky Sable, is actually a good, oh, got it in her hand, good brush for her, or for this. The angle that I'm painting at is terrible. Like I said, I'm all hunched over, not exactly ideal. So the lack of control is really from really poor posture and not necessarily from the brush or the paper or even the paint at this point. Because I realized I have to work thick in order to get this paint to work well. It's actually a fairly quick little watercolor and a fairly fun little challenge. It's always fun to revisit our pasts. Well, maybe not always fun, but sometimes it can be fun. Fun and productive to revisit our pasts. This side is going to be hard to do because I've got a really bad angle on it. And I can't afford to turn it too much, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, I think we're just about done. So that was a bit of a blast from the past sort of challenge, a throwback Thursday, if you will, using this really old Koh-i-Noor watercolor set. I was able to, let me zoom out and fix everything, paint this little cutie here. So I'm going to let this dry and then I'm going to remove the blue tape. So this is the finished piece for my little throwback challenge. Some of it is still wet, but I don't have forever to let it dry. So I just went ahead and removed the blue tape because it's not going to buckle all over the place. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, so much for revisiting the past with me, and I hope you guys have a great day. If you like challenge videos, check out my Sharpie marker challenge and my recent makeup challenge as well. So bye guys!